All right, guys, welcome back to another Monday night edition of Ask Coach G. Sorry, BMX Coach Live here on YouTube. I'm your host, Greg Romero, three-time Olympic coach, been racing since 1983. So glad for you guys to show up and join me today. If you guys are watching a replay, thank you for showing up. Make sure that you guys leave a comment, but more importantly, subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you guys get notified when I go live or when I post videos. Welcome to the show. I see a bunch of people checking in. We have Sean A., Andy, Jacob James, Alum House, JP from Canada, Isaiah Official. Guys, welcome back to the show. Today we're doing a little bit of a different way of presenting BMX Coach Live. Before we went live, I went and asked our community who's in our chat right now. If you guys are watching a replay, you guys can join the chat and just kind of watch what's going on in the chat room just by simply hitting the tab live chat, and that way you can kind of get some context of how we're unfolding this show in real time. And what we're going to talk about today, usually I'll come up with a topic and then I go deep into it, but today I allowed my community to give me some feedback. So we're going to talk about a couple different things here. And number one, we're going to talk about JP asked race day routines you think every racer should have, so we're going to touch on that. And then Alum House said he wanted to know how to compensate for slow gates because his track has a fast gate, but when he goes to another track, it tends to be slow. So we're going to talk about ways that we could strategize and be prepared for a slower gate. That's no problem. Again, if you guys are joining, welcome back. If you guys can, please make sure that you guys share this video to as many people as we can, many racers as we can. In our community of BMX training, our goal, our mission is to help out more BMXers thriving, experiencing their potential, and sustaining it. Yeah, that's right. There's so many newer BMX racers that are coming in every month, every season. And one of the biggest problems that we have in our BMX community, in our world community, is that our average member only lasts around 24 months. That's only 2 seasons. And so if we could get more people to stay in the sport longer and have more fun, then our ecosystem's going to grow and we're going to do better as a family. And so that, again, that's one of my reasons. My number one reason is to help out our BMX ecosystem and give you guys valuable content and and help out the newer and younger riders of our sport. Of course, we get a lot of older riders that come back. They used to race back in the 80s and 90s, early 2000s. They take a big break and it's like they get that itch and they want to start. They see the bike in the garage and they want to dust it off and head back to the local track. And so we get a lot of those guys coming back into the sport. And of course, our sport from BMX science, right, to tracks, to techniques, everything is always evolving and changing. And so here at BMX Training, our job is to be flexible and to adapt with the times. All right, guys. So Ryan Broget showed up to the live show. Says, "Good evening, Coach G. Just finished my last workout from your Grands Plan." Right on, man. Thanks for doing the Grands Plan. Heading to Tulsa in the morning. Thanks again for the awesome training plan. Right on, Ryan. Thank you so much for joining the show. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you, Ryan. Don't hesitate to ask. The Musties say, "Hi, Coach G." Adam Mustafa joining you from Mackay, Queensland, down under. Good morning. The Musties, man, it must be early in the morning. What time is it over there for you guys? Over here, it's 5:30 San Diego time, 8:30 Eastern time. And then, of course, I think it's probably somewhere early in the morning down under. If you're in Europe, you're probably more than likely going to be watching the replay. So good morning to you guys that have missed the show. And thank you so much for your support. Wanted to jump into this question right off the hop. The Muskies Down Under says 11:30. Wanted to jump right into this thing. I have about 45 minutes. So I'm going to go till about 6:15 my time. To me, it seems like everything goes by really quickly. So I'm going to do my best to just keep my foot on the gas, put it in cruise control, and just let it roll and try to provide as much value as I can. All right, so race day routines. That's such a great question. I love race day routines, man. And, you know, at the end of the day, for anybody that's successful, whatever routine that you're doing, whatever works, is awesome. There really is no standard routine. However, when it comes to race day routines, especially at the elite level, that high level, the Olympic level, yeah, I would say that there seems to be a culture at the highest level where people are working on the physical modalities, the emotional modalities, the mental modalities. So we're going to keep those three topics, or rather subjects. We're going to work on those three, right? So physical, emotional, and mental. And I would say that the mental can also kind of be combined with the emotional, but I'm going to leave the mental a little bit separate because I think there's some strategy to be had. And then, of course, the emotional part's going to be all about flexibility, behavior flexibility. And then, of course, physical, that's what we're going to touch on first because I think physical is really important. And I would say at the end of the day, what comes first, right? Is it going to be the physical? Is it going to be the emotional? Is it going to be the mental? And I would say everyone has their own prerequisite as to what modality comes to them first, right? Is it something that you feel? Is it something that you is it something that you see? Is it something that you hear? Something that you feel? In other words, is it physical? Is it emotional? Is it self-talk? Is it something that you see and it's mental? And so let's just go deep right into it right now. So I would say right off the hop, the number one thing that people are going to focus on when it comes to the physical race day preparation is making sure that you're prepared, right? In terms of, are you race ready? What does that mean? Well, if it's a big race, right? This weekend we have the Grands coming up, and the Grands is, like one of the guys here that's in our community, Ryan Broget, he just did the Grands training plan. And Ryan, what was it, 5 weeks? And the idea was to get him to improve of areas of strength, speed, and that way he has power out of the gate, he has power endurance around the track, and that he is physically willing and able to be explosive anywhere and everywhere on the track. So he did a combination of track work, skill work, gates, power endurance work, right, where he's working on his ability to have power from the gate all the way to the finish line. And then, of course, we worked on off the bike stuff such as strength work, right? Lower body, upper body, core work. All right. So things that make us strong, right? And being that we're a power sport, when we're going into the gym, we're working on being strong in an effort to ensure that our force development is increasing. The more force we have, conceivably, the more power we can have. Because at the end of the day, power is force times velocity, and the limiting factor to power is going to be force. That being said, the other component that he was working on was doing sprint work, doing acceleration work, doing top end leg speed work. So acceleration work for direct power out of the gate, working on his acceleration to the 30-foot mark all the way to the first jump. Okay, and then making sure that he has top end leg speed after the first jump, and of course through the turns. All right, and then of course, so we're making sure that we improve in all these areas of off the bike, on the bike, at the track, skills. Okay, so we're talking force, power, speed, power endurance, skills out of the gate, skills around the track. And making sure that we are prepared at full capacity as much as we can, then we retain that stimulus, right? Retain those adaptations that we have built and created for ourselves. And then we're going to try to go into the race day, ensuring that we're going to be at our best and be able to deliver upon the training that we have mastered in the 3, 4, 5 weeks that we've prepared for. And so, I just want to make sure that the idea behind training also is to ensure that you peak. So peak means you're pretty much, you're increasing this load of volume and intensity and imposing all this stimulus in an effort to create this new adaptation of a new monster of a racer, and then making sure that you peak by tapering and removing fatigue. So removing fatigue means pretty much Well, if you keep training, you built all this fatigue, and at the end of the day, if you do not taper meaning you remove the fatigue, then at some point you're going to reach a point of no more. What am I thinking? Man, I lost my thought. You're reaching a point of no return on gains, right? So you're pretty much gonna overtrain. There you go. You're gonna overtrain. So at some point you have to make sure you have some kind of recovery or some kind of taper. Again, tapering means keeping the intensity high, maintaining the adaptations that you have built for yourself, but then removing fatigue. Okay, so ideally, if you can go into a race weekend on race day, if you're feeling fresh and you have new adaptations and you're ready to go, you're gonna rock. You're gonna cover everything physically. Now, let's go ahead and move on to the actual race day. So we show up on Friday, we practice, we take that time to configure the track, configure the gate, configure our timing around the track, making sure that we're feeling good and looking good and feeling smooth about every obstacle on the track. And then we go ahead and rest, and then we wake up Saturday morning on a typical race day, and then we begin our routine. Physically, the first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you warm up. Okay, warming up. And warming up, you don't need to start sprinting off the hop. I would say, anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. I remember back in the day, we pedaled a lot more. I used to spend probably, 20, 30 minutes on the bike before practice. So you could spend probably, anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes on the bike, just gradually warming up at a low intensity. And then maybe every 5 minutes, you can throw some kind of sub 100%, a sub maximal, please forgive me, a sub maximal effort, I don't know, for like 5 seconds, just like, an all-out sprint, not an all-out sprint, sorry, a sub maximal sprint, right? A sub maximal effort sprint for about 5 seconds. Do that, I don't know, anywhere from every 3 to 5 minutes. And then what you're doing with that is specifically you're turning the anaerobic engine on. And what we're doing with that is that we're creating some kind of neurological activation, right? So neurologically, meaning we're turning on the connection from between the brain to the muscles, that neurological pathway, that communication pathway, to light up and be ready to go and have that appetite to pretty much deliver power effectively and at a maximal effort. You can also do an off the bike warm up at the highest level, at the Olympic level, elites. You'll see these guys doing a bunch of jumping around, skipping, and grabbing their leg and doing a quick range of motion check. And basically, that's called a dynamic effort. So a dynamic effort warm up is pretty much going to be all about contracting limbs, and not necessarily as opposed to a static warm up where one would take the muscle and then they'll sit there and stretch it. Pretend like this is a leg, and we'll try to stretch that quad. And we don't want to do that because there's studies that indicate that it actually has some kind of paralyzing effect on the filaments, on the muscle filaments. And so you don't want to do that, because what happens is our muscles are weird. They act like oars. And so the oars, it's like an oar that's in a water, and it grabs the water, and then that's how a muscle contracts. And what happens is, basically by stretching, we pretty much remove the ability for the oar to have resistance against the water, if you will. So the muscles are not going to be, it's not going to be as snappy. It's going to be kind of like pre-damaged. So you don't want to do any static stretching. Okay. If you want to do a static stretch, do it at night, I would say. If you have a muscle that's too tight, like for me, I have a tendency of having tight glutes. I would take a foam roller and I would roll it out. Okay. And that way you're kind of opening up the fascia, and you're doing this without doing any damage in terms of any kind of micro paralysis in the muscle fibers. I hope that makes sense. So dynamic effort stretching, or dynamic effort warm up, or we'll just call it dynamic warm up, right? Is basically just taking the leg and just doing a quick range of motion and just letting it go. So it would be like taking my heel and grabbing it to my butt and then just letting go immediately, just making sure that I don't hold that stretch for such a long time. I'm giving it a stretch, but it's really quick. So it's dynamic, meaning it's always moving. And so that's why you'll see guys doing leg swings and butt kicks and lots of skipping, lots of hopping, and they'll do plyometric jumps. So there's a progression to that. Okay, so that's called a dynamic warm up. So it could begin with a low intensity again, a little bit of light skipping, a little bit of dynamic stretching, and then you can start moving into something a little bit more specific with neurological adaptation, such as plyometrics. That could be something like a squat jump, just a simple squat jump. Don't need to do too many of these. Okay, 2 to 3 reps is fine on those. And then I would say from there, you want to make sure that you get ready physically, go into practice, and make sure that maybe perhaps the day before there were some things that you needed to work on that you were a little bit of unsure about. So you want to take this next practice on race day, give it an opportunity for you to configure and work something out. Maybe it was a rhythm section in which maybe you preferred manualing over jumping or something like that. Or maybe the timing out of the gate wasn't up to snuff, and maybe perhaps you're going to make a slight adjustment with your hips in relation to the cockpit and make that slight adjustment and get the timing down. I hope I'm heading in the right direction. So, from there, I would say that's pretty much the physical component, right? That's going to cover you. Make sure that those are the things that are going to ensure that you're going to have a good practice, and then you're heading into the first moto. After that, I would say, your neurological systems are going to be on. If you're going to race within the next 30 minutes within that practice, then at that point you don't need a whole lot of physical warm up. Jump on the bike, pedal around easy for 5 minutes, throw a sprint in there for 5 seconds, and then boom, head up the stage and you're ready to go. Okay. And if I'm on the right track here, if you guys have any questions as it pertains to the physical component of race day, making sure that you're prepared, leave a comment in the live chat and we'll get to it. Let's talk about the emotional component now. Now, the emotional component, listen, I would say that number one, everything is state dependent, and also everything depends on your ability to be flexible on race day, because the way you have the perfect idea on how race day is going to go for you, it doesn't always go that way. You have to be prepared for accidents that happen on the track causing delays. Maybe perhaps there's some weather delays. Maybe perhaps it's windy. Maybe perhaps you drew a moto that's really hard. And so you have to work on your emotional flexibility. I always tell my athletes that are coached by me, the man with the most flexibility controls the circumstances. That is a prerequisite of having behavior flexibility. It's actually called the requisite of, what is it called again? The law of requisite variety. The man that has the most flexibility controls their system, their emotional system. And the person that can control their emotional system will be able to control the circumstances, right? And that doesn't mean they're going to try to manipulate the circumstances. That means they just have the emotional flexibility to go with the flow, right? So in other words, if you push, maybe I pull, right? I just kind of go with the flow, if you will, right? And so if it's raining, no big deal. If it's windy, no big deal. I'm going to do my best to adapt. If it's sunny and hot, I'm going to do my best to adapt. All right. So having that flexibility is key. If I draw a really hard moto, excuse me, listen, I'm going to have the flexibility to adapt, right? I'm not going to start looking for excuses and say, oh my gosh, I don't know about this rain. I don't know about this wind. I don't know about this heat. I used to go to the Phoenix and it was dry and I couldn't breathe and it was super hot and man, it used to get at me. And I had a hard time racing with that, believe it or not. So hot weather, dry hot weather, it's harsh on me. For some people, racing in Florida, going from California to Florida, it's really high humidity and it can be hot, and the heat index is really ramped up. You have to have behavior flexibility for that. When I went to Rock Hill for the 2017 World Championships, and that was the last time I raced, man, I had to have major flexibility to deal with that high heat index. And so that's just an example of flexibility. I did what I could. So I made sure that I stay hydrated all week. I got lots of electrolytes in. I made sure that I use modalities to cool me off in between motos. I had a warm-up routine that wasn't excessive because I didn't want to sweat. I was already sweating by default. And so, having that flexibility is key. Next, I would say, having the state of flow, right? Knowing, okay, let's not go to state of flow yet, but number one, having the intent. What's the outcome that you want? Do you know your outcome on race day? That's going to be key. If you can know your outcome, okay, then you're going to be able to get into the proper state that will allow you to get that outcome. And once you get into that proper state, then it's going to allow you to be in a state of flow. That means, again, this kind of ties, the state of flow kind of ties in with the flexibility, because state of flow is just, okay, I already know my outcome. I'm in the proper state, and I'm going to go with the flow, and I'm going to be in the flow. You are the flow. And when you are the flow, everything happens magically. Everything unfolds easily and naturally and effortlessly. And that's how an ideal race day should happen, right? Whatever the race day presents to you, then you're going to go for it. You're just going to go with it rather. And going with it is so much, there's no resistance there. And I tell you, man, there's been so many times where I've seen my athletes and myself as a racer, I had resistance, man. I had resistance where it's like, man, it's really windy or it's really dark and I haven't eaten and it's been a long day and man, there's so many delays and it's just, sometimes it doesn't happen the way you want. Now we're talking at bigger races. At the local races, things happen so quick it's over before you even know it. Okay. Let's talk about the mental component. So we covered the physical component, the emotional component. Let's talk about the mental component. Now, we did talk about the mental performance mind state, and I think that's key. And that kind of bleeds into the mental component of what you need to do on race day. I would say this is going to be more geared towards tactic and strategy, watching other races, watching how races unfold on the track, looking for areas on where people are making passes in the first turn, second turn, third turn, down the last straight, okay? And making sure that you have a strategy, right? Is your strategy going to allow you to get the outcome that you want, right? Always look for strategies, always look for ways to find the win. Now, here's the thing. When it comes back to knowing your outcome, right? Knowing your outcome is key because that's going to help you. It's going to help you unconsciously find the strategy and make it happen for you on race day. If you know your outcome, right, then, whoa, I think we just had an earthquake. California. Oh, maybe we had a slight little earthquake here. Anyways, I got shifted out of state. I have to have flexibility and get back to you guys. So when you guys know your outcome, it's easy to go with the flow, but more importantly, it's easy to figure out what tactics and strategy that you're going to use. Okay. I always teach my athletes to go for the win or to go for the whole shot. I don't care how much faster the guy next to you is. You never know if they're going to make a mistake. You never know if they're going to leave the gate late, if they're going to unclip, if they're going to bump bars with another rider, if they're going to mess up in the first turn, they're going to slide out. Always go for the win. Always go for the whole shot because you never know what's going to happen. If you could practice always going for the whole shot, eventually you're going to get the whole shot, right? If you never practice going for the whole shot and you find yourself out front, okay, good on you. That's great. But if you're one of those riders that never gets the whole shot and you never practice getting the whole shot or never set the intention of getting the whole shot and you find yourself out front, you're going to hit an upper limit thermostat problem. Thermostat's going to be way too hot. You're going to get way too hot and the thermostat's going to cool you off and you're just going to let people pass you. It happens every time. So I think it's best from a mental standpoint to always go for the whole shot, but more importantly, know your outcome and always go for the outcome. Set the goal high, set the bar high. Okay. I would say for the most part, those are the three components in my model of the world. Of course, we can always get into nutrition. We can get into hydration. We can get into all kinds of different things, gearing and equipment. But I would say at the end of the day, listen, I'm a guy that likes to keep it simple. Again, figure out a routine of physically how you're going to show up. Okay. Know what you're going to do on race day in terms of your warm up. All right. And then make sure that you understand what your emotional values are. How are you going to show up with the emotional flexibility, to get through the day? And more importantly, knowing your outcome and getting into state, right? Knowing your outcome is setting the intention of what you want, okay? And a lot of people, they show up on race day, they have no idea what they want, right? They give themselves mixed messages. I think I want to win. I don't know. I just want to make sure I don't get motoed. I want to make the main. And so the thing is, if you have no clarity on the outcome, okay, and it's fuzzy and it's unfocused and it's giving you mixed feelings, then you're going to get mixed results. It happens every time. Know your outcome, okay? Get into state. And then, of course, trust the course, right? Understand that if, do your studying of the track, understand your strategies, your tactics, and then always go for the outcome that you want no matter what. All right. Cool. I think I spent like 25 minutes on this topic. Let's see where we're at. Someone says, are you going to the Grands? Okay, maybe that's for someone else. Okay. Oh, Jake Jensen's. Okay. Okay, these guys are having a conversation. Let's see here. Okay. Laszlo asked, what you suggest when riders have downtime due to weather-related issues and don't get enough track time? We have our nationals in about 2 weeks. Okay, that's a different question. We'll get to that. Greg, Steve Mutria says, Greg, would love for you to address the tire size someday. Thank you. What's the tire size? And please remind me. Here we go. Here's something as it pertains to race day. Hey, JP, if you're watching, man, is this covering what you want to learn more about? Because JP, he set the tone for the topic of the day. He wanted to know about race day routines that you think every racer should have. JP, is this helpful? Are you guys finding any value in this? Give me some feedback. Talk to me. Let's see here. Shane Hughes says, when preparing for a heavy race day, what is the most effective way to get into this? When preparing for a heavy race day, what is the most effective way to get into state of mind? Number one, knowing your outcome. Number two, knowing what state that you need to be in an effort for that outcome to happen. So there's a little trick that I do. It's called anchoring. Basically, knowing your outcome. Okay. So if, for example, you want to win a race, then you want to go ahead and dial up and anchor some modalities of what you saw, what you heard, what you felt at a race that you won, either in your future mind or in your unconscious mind when it happened at a previous time. Okay. So you could go back in time, go back into a specific time and see what you saw, hear what you heard, feel what you felt when you won specifically. Okay. Get all the modalities, write it all down, right? Write down everything that you saw visually, write down any sounds that are important, but more importantly, get the kinesthetic feelings of how you felt on race day after you had won. Okay, those feelings that you had after you won, those are going to be the most important feelings that you need to anchor and trigger in an effort for you to get into your ideal performance mind state, in an effort for you to accomplish the outcome that you want. Okay, that's how I do it. Steve says tire size rear 1.6, 175, 195. Yeah, give me more context, Steve. I remember you either message me. I get emails, I get private messages, I get DMs. Man, if you can imagine, Steve, please forgive me. I get blown out with questions all day long. Ryan Broget, know my outcome, winning the ROC and Grands, but been struggling mentally, mentally a little bit lately with my outcome, being good at gates and not perfect. Okay, Ryan, your outcome needs to be very, very, very specific. The unconscious mind needs direction. It needs specific direction. Okay, so the way it works is basically we have the conscious mind, which is about it's about 5% of our total mind. The unconscious mind's 95%. Okay, these are rough numbers. Some people believe the conscious mind's 3%, the subconscious mind is 97%. Listen, 595, it's semantics. But at the end of the day, consciously, the conscious mind is the pilot that's steering the ship. The unconscious mind is going to be the ship. It's going to be the motor. It's going to be the rudder. It's going to be the steering wheel. Okay, I hope you're following me. And the conscious mind is going to give it directions. Hey, ship, this is where you need to go. Oh, that's where you want to go? Oh, you want to go from San Diego to Hawaii? Okay, thank you for that. I'll take care of the rest. The conscious mind just needs to steer the ship, aim it towards Hawaii, give it directions, and then the unconscious mind will do the rest. Okay? All right? You just program it in there. This is where I want to go. Put in the coordinates. And the unconscious mind will figure out the range, what speed they need to go at, what way the rudder needs to go, what's the best course to get there. Okay? You're giving it an outcome. I want to go to Honolulu, Hawaii. So what does this mean for BMX? If you give yourself, the unconscious mind, an outcome, very specific, as if you already had accomplished it. That is key. It's as if you already accomplished it. Okay, that means somewhere after the finish line. Some people pick the podium. Some people pick right after the finish line. What is it they see? What is it they hear? What is it that they feel? What are the feelings? That's when you'll know. It's not going to be, oh, when I come out of the gate in the main, that's when I'll know I'll win the main. No, it needs to be when the race is over. How will you know? It's important. How will you know? And then you just focus on that. You give it directions on what it wants. It's no different than if I wanted to go pick up food or I wanted to go to a favorite restaurant. I have to pick it up because it's COVID, right? But, let's say on my phone, I go on maps. Okay, how will I know when I get there? I'm going to type in a restaurant here. I'm just going to, whatever comes up. Double Happiness. It's a Chinese restaurant, 0.2 miles away. I click on that, and then I give it directions. And then I hit go. Okay? I'll know when I get there, when I've reached the destination. Okay? When I reach the destination. I won't know if I get there when I put my coat on and get out the door. It ain't going to work. So I hope that makes sense. You have to, let me put my phone on the charger here. You have to get the outcome as if you already accomplished it. Okay. I know that could be confusing, but more importantly, what are you going to, what you got to be able to get and elicit the kinesthetic feelings of what it's going to be like. And then you need to live in those feelings. Okay. This is just straight up manifestation in anything in life. You guys want more money? Okay. All right. Well, how will you know when you have it? Be specific, right? You guys could use SMART goals. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time sensitive. Okay. And then, but more importantly, how will you know when you have it? Elicit those feelings. Okay. Be specific. I want, I don't know, $100,000 in a month. Okay. How will I know when I have it? When I'm at the ATM machine and I'm putting in two $50,000 checks. How will I feel? Oh man, empowered, ecstatic, abundant. Okay, those are going to be the feelings I need to live in. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and devise my business plan living in those feelings. That's it, man. It's really that easy. Okay. All right. So let's see here. I hope that's helpful. JP, he says, yes, thank you, and love the information about not stretching the muscles. Yeah, that's key. Ryan, hopefully that's helpful. Your outcome is not going to be based upon getting good gaits, because you could win without a good gait. I've won races. In AA Pro, we raced 3 mains. I've won overalls by getting 2-2-2 finishes in the first, second, third main. If my mind would have been like, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to win because I don't have a good gait. But if I just focus on getting out of the gate as best as I can, have the flexibility, yet still know my outcome that I want to win, get the best gait that I can, okay, and be consistent, more than likely I'm giving myself the best chance to reach my goal. If I was to base my goal of winning the race and I'm going to know I'm going to win the race by getting a good gait, that ain't going to happen, man, because again, what happens if you were to have a bad gait? You're unconsciously, you're just going to give up. Oh, I didn't get the good gait. That means I'm not going to win. So you don't want to create any chance for the unconscious mind to interpret anything that's giving it a mixed signal. Okay. So be direct. All right. I'll know that I've won the grands and the ROC when I'm taking a picture with the trophy at the finish line. That's it. And I'm throwing up a number 1. That's when I'll know. I'll be excited. I'm going to be happy, totally empowered and confident. Okay. That's it. And then that's pretty much going to be your ideal performance mind state to get the outcome that you want. All right, let's see. Where are we going with this? 6:09. I think I have a couple minutes to cover a couple of these questions here. Let's see here. Let's go back up to the top. Alum House says, how to compensate for slow gaits. My track has a fast gait, but when to the only Virginia track that is racing and the gate is slow, I tapped it twice in my practice gate, made me scared going into races. Okay, so Alum asked how to compensate for slow gaits because his track has a fast gate. He went to a race recently where he hit the gate twice and then it made him scared going into the races once races started. So the easiest way to compensate for a slow gait, okay, number 1, I would definitely take the hips and shift them back a little bit. That's going to be my first suggestion. I would not change the cue that you go on, whether it's the first horn or the first light, okay? Because if you're hitting the gate, let's just presuppose that for the most part, everybody leaves on the first cue, whether it's the first horn or the first light. Both go off at the same time simultaneously. Of course, there's many people that don't understand that. Connor Fields actually alluded that to me. He practices that trick question at some of his local clinics. So you don't want to try to mess with the timing on that cue because it's just way too difficult. If you're going to be like, oh man, I'm going to try to leave on the third light, dude, good luck. I mean, it's just way too hard. So it's easier to kind of take the hips, shift them back a little bit, and that gives you a little bit more time to get into the ideal acceleration position, leading with the head and shoulders. But more importantly, it's going to delay you getting into that acceleration position. And if that delay is good enough for you to get a good timing out of the gate, then boom, you solve the problem. Hopefully that answered your question. That's the way I would do it. I did that at the 2017 World Championships in Rock Hill. My very first gate over here in Chula Vista. If you guys ever been to Chula Vista, over on Tyler Brown's track, the gate drops really, really extraordinarily fast. I mean fast. You can't hit it. Nick Long can't hit it, and he's probably got the best reaction time in my opinion in BMX. And so I was practicing trying to hit that gate, leaving on the first horn, and then I went to Rock Hill left on my normal first cue with the same intention of explosive speed. Bam, hit the gate, fell over, ripped a hole in my new gloves, scuffed up my new shoes. I think I tore my grips a little bit. Had some behavior flexibility, didn't let it bother me, made the main, almost won, got second. All right, so hopefully that helped, Alan. Thank you so much for the question. Let's see here. Shane Hughes, when preparing for, okay, we covered that already. Steve asked about tires, I believe. Steve says, my son and I are getting ready for the grands. We stopped working out yesterday, but it feels like a long time. What do you suggest? Well, Steve, it's already Monday. Practice is on Wednesday. At this point, I would rest up because really, if you're like they're racing on Thursday, and practice is on Wednesday. You're probably going to be traveling on a Tuesday. I'd say you're done. I say you're done, man. The race is here. This would be like trying to train on a Thursday before racing on a Saturday. The race is here. If you want to do something, I would just do like a 10 to 15 minute warm up and do one sprint and then shut it down. Seriously. That's what I would do. Okay, Steve says, regarding the tire size, it seems like I've seen most good racers run with the bigger tire size. Maybe they don't, but if they do, what's the benefit or detriment? Okay. Okay, I'm presupposing that you're talking about a bigger and older rider. Bigger tire sizes, I think, in my opinion, allows you to have more traction in the turns, and also it's not going to bottom out, right? If I'm a heavier dude, I'm like 185 pounds, my race weight. If I were to run a 1.60 tire as opposed to like a 1.85 tire, then I'm going to feel that 1.6 tire folding in the turns. Okay. Now in regards to a bigger tire size, listen, some racers, they like to mess with the tire size to make these marginal, I can't speak English today. They're using these tire sizes for marginal differences to configure their gear ratio, okay? And sometimes they don't want to make changes with the front and rear cog. And so they'll switch it up and go from a 175 to a 185, for example. Now, what's the detriment and benefit from that? Okay, here's my problem with putting on a bigger tire to make the gear easier. Number one, there's a couple different reasons. Number one, if it's a taller tire, then what's happening is you're raising the bottom bracket. You're raising the rear end up and the bottom bracket's coming off the ground a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. And we know that a lower bottom bracket means better acceleration, okay? The way it was explained to me by my bike designer back in the day, a guy named Billy Griggs, a lower bottom bracket works like this. Let me make sure I have it in focus here. So let's just say, he said if you take a Coke can and you grab it at the top and you swing it back and forth, it's really easy. That's a high bottom bracket. But if we were to lower the bottom bracket, I grab it here down low, it's kind of hard. It's really hard to swing it side to side. So less sway of the bike coming out of the gate means more time going forward. We raised the bottom bracket when we put a taller tire on. Number two, a bigger tire means more weight. And essentially, that means more inertia that you have to overcome. So you're adding more weight in an effort to make the gear easier. It doesn't make any sense to me. I just changed my gear. I'm not going to change my tire. I don't like changing my tire because I want to be used to overcoming the inertia out of the gate and understanding, being configured for the acceleration on the way my bike feels in terms of the weight, and also keeping the bottom bracket as low as possible. And then, of course, I don't want, I want to make sure I feel comfortable with my tires and the tire pressure, of course, in the turns and over jumps. I don't want my tires folding. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question, Steve. Joe Gallo, how should you prepare for a race in the morning? Man, you got to rewind. If you're just now joining, Joe, please forgive us, but I explained that probably in the first 25 minutes of this live show. I would make sure that I would know my outcome, set the intention, get into state, okay? And then, of course, I would proceed with some kind of dynamic effort warm-up, some kind of dynamic warm-up, and then some kind of on-the-bike warm-up. And that's how I would prepare. Make sure that I'm configured in practice, make sure the gate's dialed and all the obstacles are dialed the way I want to take them. That's it. And then I would get in the gate and go for the win, go for the whole shot. It's really that easy. Okay, Alum says, slow gates, I push my butt back further and try to be smooth. Good, very good. Laszlo says, without track time available, what other activities can one focus on to keep riders sharp? I would, we're heading into the winter time, and I would say in December's coming up. I'm going to go over some off-season things that are that we could all do, unless you're down under in the Southern Hemisphere where it's their summer. I don't know how. It's weird that Santa Claus goes to the Southern Hemisphere, right? Aren't the reindeer? Doesn't Santa Claus get really hot wearing all that winter gear, and don't the reindeer just get super hot? I'm kidding, but down under, they're heading into the race season right now. For the rest of us that are in the Northern Hemisphere, where the weather is getting a little bit cooler and track seasons are starting to shut down here in America, and of course during COVID, there's lots of different countries that are experiencing a lot of different things happening. Generally speaking, Laszlo, if a rider has the ability to ride their bike outside, right, working on bunny hops, manualing, gate start, sprints, there's all kinds of different activities that you could do on your bike away from the track. And also it's a great opportunity for you to start developing your strength. And if you're not integrating or implementing a strength training routine, the off season is a great time to do that and get into that, start exploring that, and start integrating that into your on the bike training as well. Okay, that's a great time for you to start increasing your strength, increasing force. Increasing force means more opportunity for you to increase your power. So those are some activities that you could do to keep the riders sharp without track time available. Thank you very much for that question. Gunnar Clay says, thanks, Coach G. Always good stuff. Thank you so much for joining. Andy, please forgive me. I always pause because I want to make sure I pronounce these last names properly, and please forgive me if I did not. Andy Limjoko, or is the J silent? Limoko. Andy Limoko. We'll just call you Andy L. He says, what do you mean by shifting your hips, pulling it back more than your normal ready stance? Yeah, absolutely, Andy. That's right. And it's probably not going to be much. We're talking like, a quarter inch, half inch to an inch. We're not talking like, a half a foot. We're just talking small increments here. Make a marginal adjustment. Steve Mutria, you helped a ton. Thank you. You do a great job. Hey, I love what I do. Thank you so much, Steve, for showing up. Steve, make sure if you can, subscribe if you haven't already, but more importantly, share the video. Share the video. It's our job in our community. It's not just my job, but you guys, I see you guys every week. Listen, it's our job to share this information so we can help other people that are in our sport. So, because if we can help other people, they can enjoy the sport more. They can get the results they want. They can get what they want out of the sport. And if they can get what they want out of the sport, they're going to love the sport. And they love the sport, they're going to stay in the sport. The more people that we have in the sport, the more fun it is it not? Andy Limhoko. Andy Limhoko. He says the J is an H. Cool. Steve Mutria, by the way, you pronounce my name perfectly. Yeah, I already forgot. Is that the way I pronounced it? Yeah, I do my best, man. I do my best. I pride myself on trying to pronounce names as close as the intention, right? Laszlo Kissaman. Laszlo Kissaman. Thank you for your time. Your insight is always great. Thank you so much, Laszlo, for showing up. The musties. Santa sweats a lot down here. Yeah, man. Laszlo says, hey, we in South Africa. Right on. So we got guys from down under, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa. We got people from Canada, of course, here in America. Okay, we got one more question, and then I'm out of here. We have one from Sean A. Sean A says, do you have any tips for how to compensate for poor track conditions, such as rain, snow, or sand in the turns without slowing down? Snow? Where's the sand coming from? A sandstorm? I'm kidding. Yeah, I would say number one, you said rain. I've never raced in the snow, so I can't give you any suggestions. Listen, a coach can only take you as far and deep as they've gone themselves, and I have not raced on snow yet. However, sandy turns and rain. So we'll address the rain. The rain is tricky. The one thing that I always did was I always reduced tire pressure and just made my tires a little bit more supple so they can get a little bit more grip in the turns. Number two, you want to make sure that you know how to clip out while you're racing. I reveled in practicing that. I do it all the time on my BMX bike. You could do figure eight turns, and before each turn, you can just clip out and put your foot out. Okay? Do it for the right side, do it for the left side. Presupposing if you're clipped in, if you're on flats, more power to you. Just practice taking your foot off the pedal in the corners, because when it's raining, someone's going to slide out. If you don't slide out, the person in front of you is going to slide out, the person behind you is going to slide out. And so you have to be prepared to be nimble and ready to put your foot out. Okay? Because if you don't put your foot out, the front wheel is going to wash and you're going to be on your shoulder and on your head on the ground before you know it. Take some tire pressure out. I would start off, I don't know, 5 PSI, 10 PSI. I wouldn't take a whole lot out, but make it supple. That way you get a little bit more traction out of the gate, and that way you don't slide out in the corners. And also, when it's raining, see if you can put 100% effort out of the gate. If you can't, then you're going to have to back off on the intensity. Same way in the corners. You cannot assume that at 100% intensity that you're going to be able to maintain the same traction on dry land in the corners, right? If they're wet, you got to be cautious. So you're going to have to watch how much you angle the bike. So that means maybe perhaps you go slower into the corners. You just stop pedaling a little bit sooner into the corners, and then carry your speed nicely with a nice smooth radius line. Don't make it like, super sharp and try to angle the bike and turn the bike rapidly. You're going to break traction. Ryan Broget, man, thank you so much for the $20 tip in the super chat. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Appreciate the gesture. Okay, hopefully that answers your question, Sean. As far as snow, I can't help you on that. Sand in the turns, yeah, same thing with the cornering, right? Like you just want to make sure that you keep smooth radius lines. Okay, if you take tight radius lines and make them really sharp, then you're gonna have to angle the bike a little bit more over. And when you angle the bike, the traction's going away from you, and then with rain or sand getting in between the tire and the main surface there, it's going to compromise your traction. So heed with caution. Cool, Sean. Thank you so much. LJG BMX, if you're an inner, it is better to wear flats. Absolutely. Love flats. No intro for Ask Coach G tonight, Jacob James. Yeah, man, I forgot. We just got right into it. I was in the flow. Beth Extreme 1, 50-year-old novice. Can you talk through weight distribution, body position techniques for manualing? I'm inconsistent. I sometimes get it good, or sometimes I'm going left, or other times right. Have you checked out the manual video in our channel? Make sure you check that out. I love the question, but I would say check out the video. It's going to explain it a little bit better than I can. At the end of the day, man, getting the hips back over the back axle is where the weight needs to be in an effort to get the front wheel up in a manual position. As far as left to right, that's just something that you're gonna have to practice. That you're gonna want to press evenly between the front foot and the rear foot through the pedals. Okay. And then the other thing is that when you get into that manual position, you want to make sure that you don't have your feet like flat and try to lean back. Try to get some flexion in the ankles, right? If you manual like this, it's going to be hard for you to get your front end up, or rather keep the front end up. But if you could get your ankles to kind of like the heels to drop down like that, then it's going to be easier for you to shift your hips back and stay there and maintain that manual position. Okay. So it's just a simple adjustment with the feet. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Well, cool, guys. Looks like we're going to finish on time. Usually we go over, but guys, thank you guys so much for showing up. It's Thanksgiving holiday week over here. It's a frenzy here in America. There's Black Fridays specials going on all over the place. We have the USA BMX Grands this week. And, oh yeah, look at this. I should have put this up. Ta-da, one of my clients sent me a picture of this track. Looks awesome, Pretty simple. The starting hill doesn't look too big. Got 2 jumps going to the first turn. I love 180 hairpin turns because that allows for action to happen. And then boom, right off the hop, looks like you guys are going, the pros are staying left, and then the amateurs are going to the right. Looks like a fun track. Looks like it's going to be a good week. Hopefully everyone stays safe. And yeah. All right. Well, there you guys have it. Again, if you guys are watching the replay, thank you so much. Make sure you guys like, comment, and also subscribe and hit the notification bell. For the rest of you guys that are watching here live, again, thank you guys so much for joining me every Monday. It means a lot to me. You guys have a safe week. Enjoy your week. If you guys are going to the Grands, best of luck. Know your outcome. Get in the state. And I'll see you guys at the races.